Hi, welcome to this virtual developer day about mobile development for iOS and Android devices, brought to you by Oracle Technology Network. This is the first session of the day, and it's about preparing to go mobile. My name is Shai Schmetzer, and I'm a Senior Group Manager for the Oracle Development Tool. And in this session, we'll discuss some of the things you might want to think about before you actually start your mobile development. So the first thing that you might want to think about is, why do I actually need to do mobile development? And the answer at this stage should be quite trivial. There's over 1 billion devices out there connected to 3GL or better networks, with a lot of subscribers using those devices. Those subscribers are also your regular application users. They use their devices for playing game and for accessing their personal information, but it's very likely that they also want to use the same devices to access your enterprise applications. If you look at the trend in the market, more and more tablets and smartphones are being sold every year. They are expected to outnumber the number of PC and desktop type of devices pretty soon in terms of devices that are accessing internet applications. And with this trend growing all the time, more and more organizations are looking into how are we going to address those new devices. What type of applications do we need to develop for those devices? And what are the needs of people who are using those devices when they're accessing our enterprise application? And one thing we notice is that a lot of organizations have a kind of a knee-jerk reaction where they go and immediately start developing mobile application without first sitting down and evaluating what do they actually need to build. It's important to understand that there are different architectures for mobile applications, and there are different needs for different mobile applications. So before you go and you start coding, sit down and think, what is the specific functionality that I'm aiming to expose in my mobile application? What type of devices am I targeting? What is the network availability? What are the services that I need to leverage from the actual device? What type of users I'm using? And also consider market exposure. Are you developing an application that is only to be used inside the company? Or is one of the targets of your mobile application to give your company exposure on mobile application stores? All of those aspects have an influence on the type of architecture that you're going to use for your application. Let's dig a little deeper into each one of those. So the first thing you need to understand is that there are different devices out there. And when we are talking about a mobile device, we might be meaning different things. First of all, you can consider a laptop to be a mobile device. You can actually have it on your lap, as they say, and work without being connected to any network physically. However, most people, when they are talking about mobile application, talk more about devices such as tablets and smartphones. Although there are many feature phones out there as well. So feature phones are kind of the phones that are not exactly smartphones. They have connectivity capabilities, but the type of browsers and operating system that they run is usually a little older than what you see in the modern devices. Devices also vary on screen size. So a tablet might be a 10-inch or a 7-inch tablet and might actually have a resolution which is very similar to what you're used to when you're using a laptop. However, if you're targeting a smartphone, you're usually looking at a screen size which is 5-inch or smaller, and you need to adjust the type of user interface that you're building when you have such a limited space. Devices also vary in the type of capabilities that they offer. So some devices would let you access a GPS and camera and other on-device services. The web browser on different devices behaves differently. Some of the newer devices have browsers that support HTML5. Some of the older devices, for example, don't support HTML5. Devices also vary in the processing power and whether they are able to run big applications on the device or whether they are just meant to be an interface to view applications that are running on remote servers. One other thing that you need to think about when you're developing your application is whether you have control on the type of devices that people are going to use. Can you dictate the type of operating system screen size, and device capabilities for your end users? Or are you aiming to target as many devices as possible with a single application? One other thing that characterizes mobile application is the network type that we're accessing. So some of the devices have access to Wi-Fi, some of them have access to 4GL networks, both of them are quite fast, but some of them only use 3GL networks, some of them have even more rudimentary network capabilities, and some of them actually work offline. And this has an influence on the speed of the network and the availability of the network for your application. And it has an influence on your architecture in terms of whether you need to plan for a situation where you're disconnected, whether you need to plan for situations where the network is kind of slow, small bandwidth, and the amount of data that you can transfer between your server and your device is smaller. This has an influence, for example, on the type of web services that you might expose for your enterprise application. In terms of mobile requirement, there's different features provided by different devices. Some devices would only give you a browser, some other devices have cameras, GPS, access to contacts, calendar, SMS capability, phone capabilities. And what you need to think when you're developing a mobile application is whether you need to take advantage of those device services and how are you going to incorporate them into your application. As an example, if you're developing an expense report application for a regular desktop, you usually can't rely on having a camera there. But if you're developing the same expense report application for a mobile device, you might actually want to take advantage of the fact that you have a camera on the device and allow people to take pictures of their receipts so it can easily be attached to their expense report. So this would mean actually taking advantage of the fact that I'm running on a mobile device with specific capabilities and enabling additional functionality for my mobile application. There are also different profiles for the end users of mobile applications. Some applications are only being used occasionally by end users. So this has an influence on the frequency of interaction they have with the application and the length of the interaction they have. Okay. Some applications are meant for dedicated users who are going to use this application on a regular basis, day in, day out, and their expectation from the user interface and the type of interaction you provide them might be much higher than the occasional user. So there's a distinct difference between an application like enabling people to browse my product catalog, which a person might do once a month, okay, and allowing someone to actually use this product catalog and scan items on a regular basis in my warehouse to update my stock. The type of interaction, the expectation from the UI are different in both cases. So think about which users are going to use your application and design your application appropriately. So now that we know some of the things that influence the architecture, let's talk about the types of mobile applications that we can see in the market today. So one thing that we see a lot of is people who are just saying, we already have a website, mobile devices have web browsers, we can just take our website and let people access them from the browser on the mobile device. But without doing any adjustment, you're going to run into a user interface that is far from ideal, that is very hard to use on a mobile device. This is why you'll see most of the website today having a distinct separate UI interface available for mobile devices. This is a user interface that is much more optimized to the type of interactions and to the size of screens and the finger gestures that people are using when working on a mobile device. This is what we call the adjusted web UI for mobile. One thing that is important to understand is that the fact that you're using a mobile device doesn't just mean that you have a different screen size. On a mobile device you don't have a mouse, therefore you can't do a right click, for example, on a menu item or pop up a context menu by doing right click. You need to find another way to do it. The interaction with the devices today is done through touch gestures. So you need to support those touch gestures, and touch gestures actually introduce new types of interaction. Things like swipe and hold are type of interactions that you have with your fingers, but you didn't have before when you were using a mouse as your main interaction interface. Mobile devices are also harder to type with. The keyboard is on screen or off screen, but it's usually smaller. Inputting long text is usually tedious, so you probably want to try and eliminate the number of coding or entering of keys that you want your end users to do. The web browser on a lot of the devices is limited in terms of capabilities, in terms of ability to run JavaScript, HTML5, Flash, or other technologies. So take that into consideration when you're developing your application. And of course, many of the devices are actually using slower networks. So if your user interface is for your web application has a lot of interaction between the client and the server, on a mobile device it might actually slow your application in a noticeable way. All of this leads you to the conclusion that you actually need to build a dedicated mobile application. You can't take your existing web application and get it as is to work in a mobile scenario. You can do it in very limited scope in terms of when you're using big screens, when you're using good networks, your mobile application can probably be the same as your web application. But in most mobile scenarios, you'll want to build a specific dedicated mobile application. There are three approaches today that are common for developing mobile applications. The first of them is called native. That's an application that is actually written with a specific language and SDK of the device. The second one is a hybrid. This is an application that is built with a common, usually HTML5 user interface and a way that allows you to run on multiple devices but still be installed on the device and run on the device. And the third one is a web application. And web applications are basically applications that are delivered from a server and you access them through the browser that is available on your mobile device. And it's important to understand that one size doesn't fit all. Some scenarios require native applications, other scenarios can go about just using a web application. So you need to understand the advantages and limitation of each one of those architecture. And then you need to match them to your specific needs and find the best match for your situation. So to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of each one of those. So a mobile web application, again, this is an application that you access through the browser that is available on the mobile device. The nice thing there is that in many cases you can leverage your existing backend, your existing skills in terms of web development, and basically build a web interface that is more appropriate for a mobile device. Okay. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of running for multiple devices, because most of the devices today can present HTML in a good way. But it also limits your ability to actually have good interaction with the device in terms of taking advantage of device services, working with the storage on the device, and actually leveraging the computing capabilities of the device itself. So it's highly portable, highly reusable, but somewhat limited in terms of actually leveraging the device you're on. A native mobile application is coded in the specific SDK and tools provided by the specific device and operating system. And this leads to a limitation in terms of portability. You can only run application on the specific operating system that you built for, which means that in a lot of cases you need to redevelop your application in different languages, different tools, different SDKs if you want to run on multiple devices. The advantage of those applications, though, is that you get the best user experience on the device. You can fully leverage the device capabilities and give the best experience for your mobile users. These two approaches and their limitation gave rise to the hybrid mobile application development approach. And in hybrid mobile applications, your user interface usually uses HTML5, and your application is running inside a container on the device. So it still runs on the device, take advantage of the device computing capabilities, and the container usually allows you to access the device services such as GPS, camera, contact phone, SMS, and things like that. You still keep the advantages of portability in terms of the capability to build portable user interfaces and portable code because you're running inside the same container. Many of the enterprise applications that are being developed today, and according to analysts are going to be developed in the future, are going with this hybrid mobile application development approach. At Oracle, we offer you tools for each one of those architectures. If you are interested in developing web-based interfaces, ADF Faces allow you to create user interfaces that are capable in running on smart devices and tablets. They have support for HTML5 rendering instead of Flash, for example. They support touch gestures. They can adjust the layout to accommodate flow type of layouts, etc. If you're interested in native development, Oracle provides a set of features and capabilities in areas such as security and local database storage for those type of native applications, as well as the ability to create a lot of backend services on the server to service information to those native applications. Our seminar today is going to focus on our approach to hybrid development, and this is done using the Oracle ADF Mobile technology. Oracle ADF Mobile allows you to build a hybrid application running inside a container on a mobile device, but still keep your portability high, allowing you to run on multiple operating systems. It's important to mention that when you're looking into mobile development, the development framework is just part of the picture. In many cases, specifically when you're doing enterprise application development, you'll need other capabilities that come from other parts of your technology stack. For example, a lot of the application that you'll build will try to connect to existing enterprise application. This requires you to be able to expose existing backend services, in a lot of cases in new interfaces such as REST, JSON type of interfaces. Products like the Oracle SOA suite can help you there by simplifying the way that you connect to existing systems and expose their functionality through modern service interfaces. Mobile is also very vulnerable to security aspects. Aspects like who is allowed to access my application, how do I encrypt information going back and forth between my device and my server, and how do I make sure that if a device is stolen, we can take care of making sure that people can't access the local data store and can't actually access our applications anymore. Oracle's security infrastructure allows you to take care of those aspects. A mobile application in many cases runs on the device but gets data from the server. And what you want to have is you want to have a capable server that allows you to run your server-side application in a scalable way, in a way that allows you to expose services and data in easy ways. The WebLogic platform allows you to do all of those. Specifically, a lot of the features in the new WebLogic 12 release are targeted towards REST support, WebSocket support, and other aspects that enable mobile development to be done easier. And then there's the aspect of managing your application and devices, where you want to make sure that only the correct people can access your specific applications. You want to ensure your end-to-end performance of your application. And again, various components of the Oracle Fusion middleware would allow you to manage those aspects. So when you're looking into mobile development, we're going to focus today on the first step, which is actually building and developing the application. But please remember that Oracle has a lot to offer for the other parts of your application as well. There are some other considerations that you should take into account when you're going into mobile development projects. When you're starting on a mobile development journey, you're usually going to use a specific operating system, and each operating system has its own SDK and development environment, and you're probably going to need to download those and probably join the developer program, for example, for Android or iOS. For specific situations, you might also need to acquire and procure new development machine and test devices. For example, if you're targeting an application to be deployed on an iOS operating system, on the Apple operating system, you can only do that from a Mac machine. So you'll need to require a Mac machine to do that. Also, for example, the Android emulator today is quite slow, and a lot of people prefer to use an actual Android device to test their application. So take this into account when you're starting your mobile development. You might have some procurement and licensing that you need to look into before you're actually able to completely develop and deploy your application. Another aspect to think about is your backend services. It's true you already have your database, you already have a lot of web services available in your enterprise application as is. But mobile applications rely on servers for data, and they rely on web services for interaction, but they expect the information to be lightweight because we are using mobile networks. This means that you should be looking into a linear data transfer protocol, so possibly use REST instead of SOAP for your web services. And also make sure that you're looking into securing those web services for access from remote servers. A lot of the cases today where web services are exposed are between internal machines. Now when you're accessing those services from remote devices, you want to make sure that everything is secured in your environment. Once you build your application, there's also the question of how am I actually going to distribute my application. Whether you're going to place your application on a public store, something like the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, or whether you're planning to have your enterprise store, some infrastructure that allows you to distribute the application inside your company. There's also the aspect of how are you going to actually manage the devices and make sure that only authorized devices can access restricted applications. All of those are things you should be looking into in parallel to your planning for the application itself, the architecture, and the development process. So now let's look at a couple of mobile applications to see some of the behaviors customers are expecting to get and how we can achieve them, and those applications specifically are built with Oracle ADF Mobile. Now let's look at some Oracle ADF Mobile application that will show us some of the benefits and capabilities of a true mobile device application. So this application, for example, uses a local database that has statistics about our customers. So this is a list, and you can see the native type behavior of the list when you scroll it with the finger. We have the map on the left side where we can click on areas of the map and filter the table on the right based on the location that we're looking at. Okay, so each continent has the customers in that continent. And we can also overlay the map with statistics. So again, because we're running on a tablet, we have a lot of space. We can create a very rich user interface, provide a lot of information in visual way, and not just plain data in boring ways. Right? If we click on the customer, that's a transition to another feature. So you have the navigation bar on the bottom there. And again, you have the list on the left. You have the capability to collapse the list. Okay. You have the load more option, so you don't want to overload the memory. You want to have data fetched as needed. Let's see how we deal with orientation of the device. You can see when we're in vertical mode, the list actually collapses to the left. So again, smart usage of the real estate of the screen area. Okay. And again, a true mobile application would actually recognize those type of changes in the device position. Over here we can see basically information about specific orders. We can choose an order and see the items in this order, like that, for example. Okay, so this is one example of an application, and what you saw here is also this is using a specific skin, so a specific look and feel. Let's look at another mobile application. So this is more of an HR application. We can see a list of our employees. This is actually using the default look and feel of Oracle ADF Mobile, so without skinning. And we choose an employee. We can see information about his location. So again, Based on our location, we can see how to navigate to this employee. For example, we can see a list of employees working for him, and again, note the touch gesture, the swipe motion. And over here we can see, for example, his list of action items. So again, give him access to the information that he needs, be able to interact with the backend system, and also show information in meaningful ways. So lots of graphs and visualization, and again, sensitive to touch gesture. So your mobile application can be very rich in the way it looks. Right, so now we've seen what we can expect to build with Oracle ADF Mobile. Before we go and show you how you actually develop with Oracle ADF Mobile, let's summarize this session. Before you go and develop, think about the specific demands that a mobile application have. So mobile applications are not the same as regular web applications. They have different requirements, different environment where they run in, different network, different devices, different interaction patterns, and even the backend that you build for those probably need to be customized. So think about it before you go and start development. Understand your specific use case. Okay, if you understand what you're trying to build, what is the usage pattern, who is going to use it, on what devices, you'll be able to more accurately pick the right architecture for your application. Whether it's a native development, or web-based development, or in most likely a hybrid approach, picking the right architecture for your application can make your life easier in terms of development, in terms of having the user happy with the result from the application. When you're looking into mobile development, there's more to it than just the development framework. So this Virtual Developer Day is going to focus on the Oracle offering for development framework for mobile development. But there's more to consider, things like how do I access legacy systems, how do I create a scalable backend, what are my interaction protocols. Oracle has a complete mobile development platform with Oracle Fusion middleware that takes care of all of those aspects. It's a little outside of the scope of today's seminar, but please have a look at those other aspects before you go and build your application. Right, and now we can get ready to the new mobile challenge and learn how to develop. Just one more thing before you go and actually develop things. It would be great if you'll actually join our community. You'll get the latest update about seminars like today's Virtual Developer Day, about new blogs, new how-tos, new demos, new tutorials. You can easily follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and we have a specific blog dedicated for mobile development at Oracle. So join our blogs.oracle.com/mobile and follow us from there. Alright, let's continue with the rest of the day.